The text message from my bank hit me like a slap across the face. Your account balance is zero zeros. I blinked, refreshed the screen, and checked again. Nothing. My hands trembling, I called the bank, only to have my worst fears confirmed. Jonathan had somehow gained access and drained everything. My name is Jasmine, and 3 months ago, I thought divorcing my wealthy husband would be the end of my nightmare. I was wrong. It was just the beginning. He can't do this! I practically shouted into my phone at Nina, pacing my empty living room. Everything I had was in that account. My savings, my business funds, everything. That bastard! Nina's voice crackled through the speaker. Have you called your lawyer? They're looking into it, I spat, running my fingers through my hair. Meanwhile, I can't even buy groceries. God, I should have known he'd do something like this. Jonathan never could handle losing control. The mansion felt suffocating now. I'd won it in the divorce, along with a few other assets that probably made Jonathan's blood boil. But at what cost? Every room held memories I wanted to forget. Dinner parties where he'd belittled me in front of his business associates. Arguments that ended with him storming off to his study. Nights spent crying myself to sleep. The study. Something clicked in my mind. Nina, I'll call you back. I practically ran up the stairs, my heart pounding. Jonathan's private study had always been off limits during our marriage. His sanctuary, he'd called it. But now it was mine. The room still smelled like his expensive cologne, making my stomach turn. I started with the obvious places: desk drawers, filing cabinets, the safe behind his pretentious oil painting. Nothing unusual, just business contracts and tax documents. Then I noticed it. The floorboard under his desk was slightly raised, almost imperceptible, unless you were looking for it. My hands shook as I pried it up, revealing a manila envelope. What were you hiding, Jonathan? I whispered, pulling out the contents. My eyes widened as I scanned the documents. Bank statements, offshore accounts, emails discussing alternative revenue streams, and creative accounting. Names I recognized from Jonathan's business circle, amounts that made my head spin, and instructions for moving money that screamed money laundering. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan himself. Enjoying being broke, sweetheart? Should have taken the settlement offer when you had the chance. I could almost hear his smug laughter. Picture that arrogant smirk he always wore when he thought he'd won. But for the first time in months, I smiled. Nina, I said when she picked up my call, I need you to come over, now, and bring your camera. We need to document everything. What did you find? She asked, clearly picking up on the change in my voice. Let's just say Jonathan's not as clever as he thinks he is. I carefully laid out the documents on his desk, my hands steady now. He wanted to play dirty? Fine. Game on. Nina arrived 20 minutes later, slightly breathless. Holy shit, she whispered, looking at the spread of documents. Is this what I think it is? She had evidence, I said, watching her photograph each page. Proof of every shady deal, every illegal transaction. He was so careful to hide it from everyone, his business partners, his lawyers, even his precious mother Julia. But he never thought I'd find it. What are you going to do? I picked up one particular document, an email chain discussing the disposal of evidence related to a suspicious investment. I'm going to make a call. There's this lawyer, Talia Fleming. She's known for taking down corrupt businessmen like Jonathan. I think it's time she and I had a chat. Nina grabbed my arm. Jasmine, are you sure? This is big. Once you start this. He took everything from me, Nina. My dignity, my security, my freedom. I gestured around the study. He thought this house was my prison, but he just handed me the key to his destruction. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jonathan. Missing me yet, darling? Don't worry. You'll learn to live without luxury. Maybe get a job as a waitress? I took a deep breath, remembering all the times he'd made me feel small, worthless, dependent. Not anymore. I had proof of his crimes in my hands, and for the first time since our divorce, I felt powerful. Nina, I said, gathering the documents carefully. Let's get these somewhere safe. Tomorrow morning, I'm paying Talia Fleming a visit. It's time Jonathan learned what it feels like to lose everything. As we left the study, I took one last look at the room where Jonathan had plotted his empire's growth. He never suspected that this same room would become the source of its destruction. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I was ready to shove. Talia Fleming's office screamed power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown, and the walls were decorated with newspaper clippings of her victories. Corrupt CEO faces justice. Corporate giant falls. And similar headlines stared down at me as I sat across from her desk. "So," Talia said, examining the documents I'd brought with sharp eyes. "You found these in a hidden compartment in your ex-husband's study?" Her red-painted nails tapped against her desk rhythmically. "Yes. After he froze my accounts, I started looking for anything I could use against him." I leaned forward. "Those emails about the creative accounting, that's money laundering, isn't it?" Talia's lips curved into a predatory smile. "Oh, it's much more than that. Your ex-husband has been very busy." She spread out several papers. "These transactions here? Classic shell company operations. And this chain of emails discusses insider trading so blatant it would make Wall Street blush." My heart raced. "Can we use it?" "Use it?" Talia laughed. "Honey, we can destroy him with this. But I need to know, are you ready for what comes next? Jonathan won't go down quietly. He'll fight dirty." "He already is fighting dirty," I replied, my voice steady. "He's trying to starve me out, humiliate me. Yesterday, he sent his mother Julia to check on me." "What happened?" "She offered me money to go away quietly. Said Jonathan would restore my accounts if I signed an agreement never to contest anything in the divorce settlement again." Talia's eyes narrowed. "And?" "I told her to get out of my house." I smiled, remembering Julia's shocked face. "That's when I knew I had to come to you." The intercom buzzed, and Talia's assistant's voice came through. "Ms. Fleming, there's a call from Jonathan Ortiz's office." "Already?" Talia raised an eyebrow. "He works fast. Put him through." She hit the speaker button. "Talia!" Jonathan's smooth voice filled the room. "I hear my ex-wife paid you a visit." "News travels fast," Talia replied coolly. "Let me save us all some time. Whatever Jasmine told you, whatever she thinks she has, it's nothing. She's just a bitter ex-wife trying to cause trouble." I opened my mouth to speak, but Talia held up her hand. "Is that so?" she asked. "Then you won't mind explaining the wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands? Or perhaps the emails about disposing of evidence?" Silence, then. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. In fact, I'm looking at the proof right now. Would you like me to read some highlights?" "You're making a mistake." Jonathan's voice turned cold. "You don't want me as an enemy." "No, Jonathan." Talia's voice was steel. "You don't want me as an enemy. Expect to hear from my office soon." She ended the call. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "You have no idea what you've just started." Talia watched me read it. "Last chance to back out. Once we file these documents, there's no going back." I thought about all the years I'd spent diminishing myself to fit into Jonathan's world, all the times I'd swallowed my pride when he'd treated me like a trophy rather than a partner. "Do it. File everything." "Good." Talia stood up. "I'll have my team start working on this immediately. But Jasmine?" Her expression softened slightly. "Be careful. Men like Jonathan are most dangerous when cornered." As if on cue, my phone rang. It was my brother Derek. "Jazz!" He sounded worried. "Jonathan just called me. He's offering me a job at his company. Said he wants to keep things friendly in the family." "What's going on?" "Don't take it," I said quickly. "He's trying to manipulate you. Listen, can you come over tonight? There's a lot I need to tell you." After leaving Talia's office, I drove home, my mind racing. The game had begun, and Jonathan's call proved he was already scrambling. But something else was bothering me. How had he known I was meeting with Talia so quickly? The answer was waiting in my driveway. Nina stood there, looking devastated. "I'm so sorry," she said as I got out of my car. Julia came to my house this morning. She had photos of my brother's business dealings with Jonathan. Said if I didn't tell her where you were going today, she'd make sure my brother lost everything. I hugged her tightly. It's okay, let them play their games. We knew this wouldn't be easy. What's our next move? I looked at my phone, where another text from Jonathan waited. You should ask your mother about the last time someone tried to expose me. My mother? I hadn't spoken to her in years. What did she have to do with any of this? Our next move, I told Nina, is to find out exactly what my mother knows about Jonathan. Because something tells me this goes deeper than we thought. The news broke like a thunderstorm. Corporate scandal rocks industry. CEO Jonathan Ortiz under investigation, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as the story spread across social media. Look at this, Derek said, scrolling through his phone on my couch. The stock is in free fall. Jonathan's board of directors called an emergency meeting. I was about to respond when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a press badge. Ms. Campbell? She called out. Rebecca Mills from the Financial Times. We'd like your comment on the allegations against your ex-husband. Don't answer it, Derek advised, peeking through the curtains. There are 3 more reporters on the lawn. My phone rang. Talia. Turn on Channel 7, she said without preamble. Jonathan's doing damage control. There he was on my TV screen, standing at a podium outside his corporate headquarters. He looked immaculate as always in his tailored suit, but I could see the strain around his eyes. These allegations are completely false, he was saying, his voice steady. This is nothing more than a vindictive attack by my ex-wife, who is bitter about our divorce. I have always conducted my business with the utmost integrity. Integrity? Derek snorted. Is that what he calls hiding money in offshore accounts? The TV suddenly switched to breaking news. Anonymous source leaks emails detailing Ortiz Corp financial misconduct. My phone exploded with messages. The first was from Jonathan. You're going to regret this. The second was from Julia. You've just destroyed my son's life. I hope you're prepared for the consequences. But it was the third message that made my blood run cold. From an unknown number. I saw the news. We need to talk. Mom. Derek, I said, showing him the message. Did you tell her about any of this? He shook his head. Haven't spoken to her in months. But Jess, maybe you should hear what she has to say. After 15 years of silence, now she wants to talk? The doorbell rang again. This time it was Nina, looking frazzled. You need to see this, she said, rushing in. She pulled up a social media post on her phone. Someone had leaked photos of Jonathan leaving a hotel with his lawyer last night. The comments are wild, Nina said. People are connecting dots between Jonathan's company and other corporations. It's spreading faster than they can contain it. My phone rang again. Talia. We have a problem, she said. Jonathan's lawyers are filing a countersuit. They're claiming you obtained those documents illegally. But it was my house, I protested. The study was legally mine after the divorce. I know, but they're trying to muddy the waters. Listen, there's something else. They're bringing up your mother in their filing. Something about a previous settlement 15 years ago. What do you know about this? Nothing, I said. But a memory stirred. Mom crying late at night. Dad yelling about betrayal. And then suddenly, we never saw Mom again. I need to make a call. I stepped into the kitchen for privacy and dialed the unknown number. She answered on the first ring. Jasmine, my mother's voice was exactly as I remembered it. I was wondering when you'd call. What do you know about Jonathan? She sighed. It's not a conversation for the phone. Meet me at the River Cafe in an hour. Come alone. Why should I trust you? Because, she paused. 15 years ago, I made the mistake of taking Jonathan's money to stay quiet. I won't let him do the same thing to my daughter. After I hung up, Derek was watching me with concern. You're not really going alone, are you? Of course not. I texted Talia the details. Have someone watching the cafe. If anything seems off. I'm coming too, Derek insisted. I'll sit at the bar. Mom won't even notice me. My phone buzzed with another text from Jonathan. Ask your mother about October 15th, 2008. Ask her what she did with the money. October 15th, Derek said, reading over my shoulder. Isn't that? The day Mom left, I finished. And apparently, Jonathan knows why. Nina grabbed her keys. I'll drive. You're shaking too much. As we headed to the cafe, I watched another news alert pop up. Ortiz Corp executives begin mass resignation. The empire was crumbling, but I couldn't celebrate yet. Whatever my mother knew about Jonathan, whatever happened 15 years ago, I had a feeling it was about to change everything. Ready? Nina asked as we pulled up to the cafe. I took a deep breath, watching a familiar figure through the window. My mother, sitting alone, stirring her coffee just like she used to at our breakfast table 15 years ago. No, I said, but let's do this anyway. The River Cafe was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. My mother, Valeria, looked older than I remembered, but her posture was still perfect, her hands steady as she lifted her coffee cup. 15 years melted away as I slid into the seat across from her. You look just like your father, she said softly. Let's not do this, I cut her off. Tell me about Jonathan. October 15th, 2008. She set down her cup. Your father's company was in trouble. Jonathan, he wasn't CEO then, just a rising star in corporate finance, offered to help. But there was a catch. What kind of catch? I was on the board of directors. I discovered some irregularities in the books. The same kind of thing you found now. She smiled bitterly. Jonathan approached me privately, offered me $2 million to resign quietly and disappear. Said if I didn't, he'd make sure your father went to prison instead. My coffee turned sour in my mouth. So you took the money and abandoned us? I took the money to protect your father, she snapped. And you? Do you know what happens to families when these scandals break? Look at what Jonathan's doing to you now. That's different. I have proof. So did I. She pulled out an envelope from her purse. These are copies of everything I had back then. Bank statements, board meeting minutes, emails. Sound familiar? My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The documents inside were like ghosts of the ones I'd found in Jonathan's study. Different dates, different amounts, but the same schemes. Why are you showing me this now? Because history is repeating itself. Jonathan's been doing this for years, Jasmine. He finds struggling companies, infiltrates them, sets up his laundering operations. When someone gets too close, he either buys them off or destroys them. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek at the bar. Julia just walked in. I looked up to see Jonathan's mother making her way toward our table, her designer heels clicking on the floor. Well, Julia said, stopping at our table. This is a touching reunion. We're done here. I started to stand, but Julia put a hand on my shoulder. Sit down, dear. The three of us need to talk. There's nothing to discuss, my mother said, her voice ice. No? Julia smiled. Not even about what really happened to those $2 million? The money that mysteriously ended up in your daughter's college fund? I stared at my mother. What? I couldn't just leave you with nothing, she whispered. Your father. He never knew. I made it look like a scholarship. How sweet, Julia said. And now here you are, both trying to destroy my son. Again, your son, my mother stood up, is a criminal who preys on vulnerable companies and people. He was doing it 15 years ago, and he's doing it now. Careful, Julia's voice hardened. Remember what happened last time you made accusations without proof. You mean this proof? Talia's voice cut through the tension. She appeared beside our table, holding up her phone. I've been recording this entire conversation. Fascinating stuff about historical patterns of fraud, wouldn't you say? Julia's face went pale. You can't. Oh, but I can. And I did. Talia smiled. Your son's not the only one who knows how to set a trap. My phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. Breaking, former board member comes forward, with historical evidence of Ortiz Corp fraud. You planned this, Julia accused, looking between my mother and me. No, I said, standing up. But maybe it's time someone stopped running from your son's threats. Jasmine! My mother touched my arm. There's more you need to know. About your father's company, about why I really left. Another buzz from my phone, Jonathan calling. Don't answer it, Talia advised. But I had to know. What do you want? Turn on the news, he said, his voice shaking with rage. Now! The cafe's TV was already showing it. Footage of police cars outside Jonathan's office building. The caption read, FBI raids Ortiz Corp headquarters. This isn't over, Jonathan hissed before hanging up. He's right, my mother said quietly. This is just the beginning. Jonathan won't stop until he's destroyed everyone who's turned against him. Then maybe it's time we stopped him, together. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in 15 years. Tell me everything, no more secrets, she nodded, tears in her eyes. It started long before October 15th. Your father's company wasn't Jonathan's first target, and I wasn't his first victim. Julia had gone very still. Don't, she whispered. But my mother's eyes were steel. Your son learned his tricks from somewhere, Julia. Should we tell Jasmine who taught him? The cafe seemed to hold its breath as my mother opened her purse and pulled out another envelope. This, she said, is what really happened 20 years ago, when Julia was still CEO of her own company. Your mother taught Jonathan everything he knows about corporate fraud, my mother explained, spreading out yellowed documents across the cafe table. Before Ortiz Corp, there was Julia's company, Pinnacle Industries. That's enough, Julia snapped, reaching for the papers, but Talia smoothly intercepted her hand. 20 years ago, my mother continued, Julia ran one of the largest investment firms in the city. I was a junior accountant there. That's where I first noticed the pattern. Shell companies, missing funds, forged documents. You're lying, Julia's voice shook. Am I? What about Project Aurora, the offshore accounts, the mysterious fire that destroyed the evidence room? My mother pulled out a newspaper clipping. 3 people died in that fire, Julia. I felt sick. What happened? The SEC was closing in. Julia needed a way out, so she did what any loving mother would do. She set up her 20-year-old son as the fall guy. And I protected him, Julia exploded. They were going to arrest someone. Better a young, naive executive who'd get sympathy from the jury than... She stopped, realizing what she'd admitted. Talia's phone was still recording. But Jonathan figured it out, my mother said softly. Didn't he? He learned your methods, studied your books. Then he turned them against you, took control of the company piece by piece until you were nothing but a figurehead. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Police just pulled up outside. Like mother, like son, Talia commented, watching Julia's face, both willing to sacrifice anyone to save themselves. Julia's composure cracked. You don't understand. I taught him because I had to. The business world, it's brutal. I needed him to be stronger than I was. Stronger? I laughed bitterly. You created a monster, and now you're helping him destroy people's lives, just like you destroyed mine. Your life? Julia scoffed. What about my son's life? The empire we built? Built on fraud and death, my mother interjected. She turned to me. When I found out about Jonathan's connection to Pinnacle, I tried to warn your father. That's when Jonathan offered me the money. He said if I didn't take it, what happened at Pinnacle would happen at your father's company too. 2 police officers entered the cafe, heading straight for our table. Julia Ortiz? One asked. We need you to come with us. The FBI has some questions about the Pinnacle Industries fire. As they led Julia away, she turned to me. He'll never forgive you for this, either of you. My phone rang. Jonathan again. This time, Talia answered it on speaker. It's over, Jonathan, she said. We have everything. Pinnacle, the fire, your mother's confession. The FBI is moving on all fronts. You think you've won? His voice was deadly calm. Ask your mother what happened to the other whistleblowers, Jasmine. Ask her about David Torres, Sarah Mitchell, Robert. All dead, my mother cut in. Accidents, suicides, disappearances. That's why I ran. That's why I stayed away, to keep you safe. Smart woman, Jonathan sneered. Pity her daughter isn't as wise. Check your email, darling. My phone dinged. The email contained a single video file. Security footage from my father's old office, dated October 15th, 2008. In it, my mother handed something to Jonathan, then accepted an envelope. The smoking gun, Jonathan said. Proof your mother didn't just take a bribe. She actively helped me set up the fraud at your father's company. How do you think I got all those account numbers? All those signatures? I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Is it true? I whispered. I had no choice, she said. He had proof I helped Julia at Pinnacle. He would have exposed everything. One big happy family of fraudsters, Jonathan laughed. Face it, Jasmine. You're the only clean one in this mess. Walk away now, or I release this to the press. Your mother goes to prison, your father's reputation is destroyed, And what? I cut in. You think I care about protecting anyone's reputation anymore? Release it. Release all of it. Let everyone see exactly what kind of people you all are. Silence on the line. You'd sacrifice your own mother? He asked finally. She sacrificed me first. I looked at my mother's stricken face. The difference is, I'm not running away. I'm standing here, watching your whole house of cards fall. Then burn with it, he snarled and hung up. Talia was already on her phone. Get me the FBI agent in charge. We need protection details now. Jonathan's just made threats against my client. My mother reached for my hand. Jasmine, please, let me explain. I pulled away. Save it for your testimony. You're going to tell the FBI everything, every detail, every scheme, every death. No more running. And then? She asked quietly. And then? I looked at the cafe's TV, still showing the raid at Jonathan's office. Then we finish what we started. Together or not, Jonathan's going down, and this time, no one's taking a payoff to stay quiet. The safe house felt like a prison, even if it was a luxury apartment. 3 days had passed since the FBI moved us here, and Jonathan's threats were proving very real. Another one of your father's old employees was attacked last night, Talia announced, walking in with a stack of papers. Someone broke into his house, left photos of his children on his kitchen table. He's agreed to testify now, says he'd rather face Jonathan in court than live in fear. How many does that make? I asked, looking up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing old company records. 7 witnesses in 4 days, Derek answered, from his spot by the window. He'd refused to leave my side since everything went down. Jonathan's getting desperate. My mother sat in the corner, going through more old documents. She'd been cooperating fully with the FBI, though things between us remained tense. I found something, she said suddenly, about the Pinnacle fire. There was an insurance payout, $50 million, but according to these records, only $30 million was reported. Talia leaned over her shoulder. Where did the other $20 million go? That's the interesting part. My mother pulled up a bank statement. It was divided into 3 accounts, one for Julia, one for Jonathan, and one for... A knock at the door cut her off. The FBI agent assigned to us, Agent Sarah, entered with a grim expression. We have a situation, she said. Jonathan's been spotted boarding a private jet. You let him leave the country? I stood up, furious. No, Sarah smiled. We let him think he was leaving the country. The pilot works for us. He's currently landing at a private airstrip where we have a team waiting. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the news. The TV was already showing it. Breaking. Ortiz Corp CEO attempts escape. Private jet diverted. Then another text. Wrong jet. The color drained from Agent Sarah's face as she received a call. What do you mean he's not on board? It was a decoy, my mother said quietly. That's what I was trying to tell you. The 3rd account from the Pinnacle fire? It belonged to a private aviation company. Jonathan's owned it for 20 years. My phone rang. Nina. "Turn on Channel 7, she said without greeting. "Now." The headline made my heart stop. Multiple explosions reported at former Pinnacle Industries building. "The evidence," Talia breathed. "All the old records were stored there." "Not all of them." My mother pulled out a USB drive. "I made copies years ago, kept them in a safety deposit box under a different name. I knew this day would come eventually." Agent Sarah was already mobilizing teams, barking orders into her phone. "Lock down all private airfields. Check security footage from the past 48 hours. He had to have help." Another text. "Getting warmer. Ask Julia about the boat." "The boat?" I turned to my mother. "What boat?" Her face went pale. "Julia's yacht. She used to joke it was her escape plan. It's fully stocked, has satellite communications, could reach international waters in—" "How long?" Talia demanded. 3 hours. Agent Sarah was already on it. "Coast Guard's been notified. Where's the marina?" "Wait," I said, something clicking. "This is too easy. Jonathan wants us to chase the boat." "While he does what?" Derek asked. My phone buzzed again. "Smart girl, tick-tock." Then it hit me. "The servers," I gasped. "The backup servers at my father's old company. They would still have records of all the transactions from 2008. "Those servers were decommissioned years ago," my mother said. "But not destroyed," I countered. "They're in storage at the data center across town. Jonathan knows this because he's the one who ordered them preserved, probably keeping them as insurance against everyone involved." Talia was already dialing. "This is Fleming. We need a team at the East Side Data Center immediately. Authorization code." An explosion rocked the building. Fire alarms blared. "He's here," my mother whispered. "This was his plan all along. Get everyone looking elsewhere while he came for us directly." Agent Sarah drew her weapon. "Everyone to the panic room, now!" As we rushed down the hallway, my phone buzzed one final time. "Found you." The lights went out. "Keep moving," Agent Sarah ordered in the darkness. "The panic room has backup power." A figure stepped out of the stairwell ahead of us. "Hello, darling." Jonathan's voice came through the darkness. "Miss me?" "It's over," I called out. "The FBI has everything." "Not quite everything." He stepped into the dim emergency lighting. "Your mother's copies, the server backups, and now, you, the last loose ends." "Drop your weapon!" Agent Sarah shouted. Jonathan laughed. "You really think I came alone?" More figures emerged from the shadows. We were surrounded. "Now then," Jonathan said pleasantly, "let's discuss how this is really going to end. You know what your problem is, Jonathan?" I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "You always underestimate people, just like you underestimated me during our marriage." He smiled that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "And you're still talking too much, darling. Now hand over the USB drive, and maybe I'll let Agent Sarah here live." "You mean this USB drive?" I held it up. "The one with all your mother's dirty secrets?" "Last chance, Jasmine. Funny thing about secrets, Jonathan. They're only powerful when they're actually secret." I tossed him the drive. "Check your phone." His smile faltered as he pulled out his phone. His face went ash white. "What did you do?" he whispered. "Talia?" I called out. "How many news outlets did we send the files to?" "All of them." Talia's voice came through my phone on speaker. "Every major network, newspaper, and online publication just received 20 years' worth of evidence. It's already trending on social media." One of Jonathan's men shifted nervously. "Boss, my wife just sent me a link. It's everywhere." "That's impossible," Jonathan snarled. "The servers—" "Were a decoy," my mother cut in. "Just like your private jet. Just like Julia's yacht. We learned from the best, didn't we? You really think I won't shoot you all right now?" Jonathan's hand shook as he raised his gun. "With what bullets?" Agent Sarah asked calmly. Jonathan pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Did you really think the FBI would leave loaded weapons in a safe house? Sarah stepped forward. Drop it. Your men aren't actually your men, Jonathan, I explained as his backup suddenly trained their weapons on him. They're FBI. Have been since you hired them last week. Turns out loyalty can be bought. Isn't that what you always said? The lights came back on. More agents poured into the hallway. No. Jonathan backed away. No, I had everything planned. The explosions, the diversions, were exactly what we wanted you to do. Talia emerged from the stairwell behind him. Every move you made was tracked, documented, and added to the evidence pile. By the way, your mother just finished her confession. She's quite thorough when offered immunity. Jonathan lunged for me, but Derek was faster, tackling him to the ground. That's for my sister, he growled, as agents pulled Jonathan up and cuffed him. You've lost everything, I told Jonathan as they led him away. Your company, your freedom, your reputation. How does it feel? He spat at my feet. You think this is over? I still have accounts you'll never find. Contacts who owe me favors. This isn't over until... Until what? A new voice joined us. Julia stepped into the hallway, flanked by more agents. Until you run to your hidden accounts? The ones I helped the FBI freeze this morning? Or maybe your contacts? The ones who've been turning themselves in all day to make deals? Mother? Jonathan's voice cracked. What have you done? What I should have done 20 years ago. Stopped you. She wouldn't look at him. I created this monster. Now I'm helping end it. Take him, Agent Sarah ordered. As they led Jonathan away, he called back one last time. You'll regret this, Jasmine. All of you. No, I said quietly. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Ortiz Corp CEO arrested in dramatic raid. 20 years of corporate fraud exposed. Multiple executives turn state's evidence. Stock market reacts to massive financial scandal. It's really over? Derek asked, putting an arm around my shoulders. Almost, Talia said. We still have to track down every account, every transaction. It could take years to unravel everything. My mother touched my arm hesitantly. Jasmine, I know I can never make up for... You're right, you can't. I cut her off. But helping bring him down, it's a start. Agent Sarah cleared her throat. Ms. Campbell, we'll need you to come down to the office. There's something else you should see. What is it? We found records of other companies, other families Jonathan targeted over the years. People who lost everything, just like you almost did. They're all being notified, but... She paused. They're asking to meet you. You've become something of a hero to them. I thought about all the people Jonathan had hurt, all the lives he destroyed. Set up the meeting. It's time these stories were heard. As we walked out of the safe house, past the evidence teams and news vans, I felt lighter than I had in years. Jonathan had tried to break me, to silence me, to make me disappear like all his other victims. Instead, he'd made me stronger. And now, standing in the morning sun with the truth finally exposed, I knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. The courtroom fell silent as Jonathan was led in for sentencing. He'd lost weight in custody, his designer suit replaced by prison orange, his confident smirk gone. He wouldn't look at me or at Julia, who sat rigidly in the front row. All rise, the bailiff called. The judge adjusted her glasses, reviewing the papers before her. Before I deliver the sentence, would any of the victims like to make a final statement? I stood. Jonathan finally looked at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Your Honor, I began. I'm not here to talk about what Jonathan took from me. Instead, I want to talk about what he gave me. Strength I didn't know I had, allies I never expected, and a purpose I never imagined. I gestured to the packed courtroom, filled with Jonathan's victims. Every person here has a story of loss, of betrayal, of having their lives shattered. But look at us now. We're not victims anymore. We're survivors. The judge nodded. Mr. Ortiz, please rise for sentencing. Jonathan stood, his chains rattling. For 37 counts of fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and attempted murder, I sentence you to 40 years in federal prison. Additionally, All assets connected to your criminal enterprise will be seized and used to establish a restitution fund for your victims. The gavel struck. Jonathan's empire, built on lies and betrayal, ended with a single wooden crack. As they led him out, he tried one last time. Jasmine! Goodbye, Jonathan, I cut him off. Enjoy prison. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as Talia addressed the media. Today's sentence marks the beginning of justice, not the end. The Victim Restitution Fund will help rebuild lives destroyed by corporate fraud. But more importantly, we're establishing the Truth in Business initiative. I stepped up to the microphone. This initiative will provide resources and protection for whistleblowers, ensuring that no one has to choose between doing what's right and protecting their family. My mother will serve as our first advisory board member, using her experience to help others come forward. My mother squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. We weren't fully healed, but we were getting there. Nina rushed up with her phone. You need to see this. The stock market's responding to the sentence. 3 major corporations just announced independent audits. They're calling it the Ortiz effect. Companies scrambling to prove they're clean before their own whistleblowers come forward. Good, Talia smiled. Let them scramble. Julia approached us slowly. Jasmine, I owe you an apology. What I did to Jonathan, teaching him to be ruthless. I thought I was preparing him for success. Instead, I created a monster. You did, I agreed, but you also helped stop him. That counts for something. My phone buzzed. A message from Derek. Dad's watching the news coverage. He wants to talk. Another piece of my fractured family, slowly finding its way back. Ms. Campbell! A young woman pushed through the crowd. I'm Lisa. Your story inspired me to expose fraud at my company. Would you help me, like you helped the others? I looked at Talia, who nodded. That's exactly why we created the initiative. Come to our office tomorrow. As the crowd dispersed, I stood on the courthouse steps with my unlikely team, my once estranged mother, my brilliant lawyer, my loyal friend Nina, my supportive brother, and even Julia, all of us changed by the fight for justice. So, Nina nudged me. What now? Planning to relax, finally? I laughed. Actually, I've been thinking. All those offshore accounts we uncovered? That money shouldn't just go to restitution. We should use it to fund more investigations, support more whistleblowers, turn Jonathan's weapon against other corporate criminals, Talia mused. I like it. Me too, my mother added, and I know exactly where to start looking. I took one last look at the courthouse where Jonathan's reign of corruption had ended. He'd tried to destroy me, but instead, he'd given me something unexpected, a mission. You know what the best revenge is? I asked, watching more news vans arrive. It's not just exposing the truth. It's making sure the truth keeps coming out again and again until there's nowhere left for people like Jonathan to hide. To justice! Nina raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. To justice! We echoed, standing together in the morning sun, ready to take on whatever came next. Behind us, the courthouse doors opened again as another corporate criminal was led in for trial. I smiled. There was work to be done, and this time, I wasn't fighting alone.